This video is brought to you by MoviePalette.com. Hey everyone, do you have a favorite movie that you would love to hang on your wall but you can't think of what scene or what poster to get? Well, now you can get the entire movie on one high quality canvas. With MoviePalette.com, you can get every scene from your favorite movie, or more specifically, the dominant color of every scene from your favorite movie in chronological order on a great high quality canvas. It also comes with a silver engraving of the title down at the bottom. Has rubber stoppers on the back to keep it from bouncing. And they have a huge catalog of what to choose from. Whether you're a horror fan, or a fan of sci-fi, Marvel, Japanese anime, Disney animation, drama, or Oscar classics, there's a movie palette for you. Right now, MoviePalette.com is having a sale for 50% off for their Halloween sale. But if you go right now, and if you enter room 15, you'll get 15% off of the movie palette of your choice. That's ROOM15 for 15% off of your movie palette. Again, this is a great value for a great piece of home decor that looks great for any film and for any film buff and anywhere in your home. You will definitely like this product. Mine is of The Shining, and I could not be happier with it. So definitely go to MoviePalette.com and enter ROOM15 for 15% off of your palette. Hey horror fans, welcome back to 237, back with another review. As I continue my month of October run through of Stephen King film adaptations and anthology horror films. And in my last video, I did a review of the 2012 Anthology VHS, which I was never a big fan of. Not in 2012 when I first saw it, not last night when I rewatched it. Still not a big fan of VHS. It has some decent ideas, but for the most part, the execution and I would say all but probably one of the stories were pretty poor. I also had issues with the wraparound, the way it was filmed. One story didn't even make sense as to why it was in the film. So now we come to the sequel, which again I don't own. It's on Hulu along with the third film, which I'll get to. 2013's VHS 2. Now, this again was produced by A Bloody Disgusting. Slightly bigger budget, $350,000. Grossed a little bit less. Less than $1 million, about $800,000 around there. This was immediately rushed into production right after the first one came out because a lot of people really liked the first film. Some people came back, Simon Barrett and Adam Wingard, who did, I believe, the wraparound in VHS. They come back as directors in this one. Again, same formula, hired a handful of filmmakers, told to write and direct whatever they wanted for a story. Only here, Simon Barrett directed the wraparound, which I will say the wraparound was better handled in this one, though it's essentially the same thing as in the previous film. Adam Wingard directs the first story called Phase 1 Clinical Trials, which is kind of like the next to last story in the previous film, where I don't understand how this footage would be on a VHS tape, just because of how it's filmed. And that one was written by Simon Barrett. Now, the one I was excited for, and the one that I do like the most, is A Ride in the Park, which is directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who is one of two directors of the original Blair Witch Project. Still my favorite found footage film. Again, Cannibal Holocaust does not count. It's not a found footage film. Still my favorite. Still the best. And Greg Hale, who was a producer of Blair Witch, but it was written by Jamie Nash. Then there's Safe Haven, directed by Timo Tajanto, if I pronounce that correctly, and Gareth Evans, which they also wrote it. And the final story, Slumber Party Alien Abduction, directed by Jason Eisner and written by John Davies. Then a whole list of cinematographers, editors, a bunch of people did the music. James Gaiman, Steve Moore, Arya Prayogi, and Fajar Yuskamal, if I pronounce that correctly. And again, Bloody Disgusting, The Collective, and Haxan Films are the ones that put it out. Which, they were the ones that also put out the original Blair Witch Project. This one has less stories. One had 5. This one has 4. It's about a half hour shorter, which, good. I mean, Creepshow is around 2 hours, probably 2 hours. That has 5 stories. But those stories are great, and that has style to it. I was finding it kind of a chore to sit through all 2 hours of VHS. This one being a half hour shorter with one less story, okay, that's a plus. The wraparound does look better. It's essentially the same thing. Instead of these criminals who are hired to break into a house and find a particular tape, here is this couple who are PIs. They're hired by this woman to look into the disappearance of her son Kyle. And so they go to his house, and some people have said it's weird that they're watching these tapes, but they're PIs. They're going to investigate everything. So the girlfriend starts watching the tapes, even has multiple TVs set up like the first film, and the boyfriend inspects the rest of the house. And as she's watching the screens, there's this shape in the shadows that moves around and watches her. Which I believe Kyle was played by... Okay, not who I thought it was. There really wasn't anyone that I recognize. Adam Wingard did play the lead in the first story, which it was written for James Rolfe, which that would have been really, really cool to see James Rolfe do that. But he was working on the ABGN movie at that time, so he couldn't do it. But yeah, I didn't recognize anybody else in any of these stories. So the first one, Phase 1 Clinical Trials. It has some cool ideas, but this is the one kind of like the Skype call in the previous film, where the whole segment is like this desktop footage of like a Skype call. This one, a guy gets like a cybertech eye implanted. He lost his eye in a car accident. He has this new one put in. Doctor says you may experience some glitches, and he's able to pick up paranormal frequencies, seeing ghosts everywhere. Which, some scenes, okay, they're kind of just blatant, like he turns around, there's one like right in his face. But like the previous film, when they have paranormal stuff, it's more effective, like when he's at the end of the hall and he turns around and you quickly see like a little ghost girl like run off camera way down at the end of the hall. You know, when stuff's in the background or when he's walking past a door and someone's standing there, that's effective. This one woman shows up, says she had the same procedure, but it was an earpiece so she could hear paranormal frequencies. Pretty much saying the more you ignore them, the less effective they are. Even to the point where this one ghost shows up, so she just has sex with him to divert his attention. But they're attacked. You know, it ends with them just being attacked. She's pulled like paranormal activity, dragged across the floor into the pool and drowned. He's attacked, gets his eye ripped out, shoved down his throat. The second story, Eduardo Sanchez's A Ride in the Park. This was the best shot, the best idea for a story, and probably the best executed. Uh, this movie definitely has more zombies than the first one. Because this one in Safe Haven, well, Safe Haven doesn't come out and say they're zombies, but they act like it. So, and again, I've said this before, my two big sort of critiques when it comes to one, anthologies is, do these feel like ideas or do they feel like short stories? Like I said with Creepshow, these are just shorter stories that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Which is why, Theater Bizarre I was kind of harsh on, because they just felt like not fleshed out ideas. Found footage, I have to believe why this is all being filmed. I mean, you watch Paranormal Activity and you're 75% of it is, why is this being filmed? Nobody would film this. This, okay, so the guy with an eye, and is even told he can't turn it off. Okay, I get why that's constantly filming. A ride in the park, it's a guy with a GoPro, and then because of what happens to him, he's not going to turn it off, so okay, that makes sense. 3, it's a documentary crew. Documentary filmmakers shoot everything. The 4th one, yes, it mostly is a GoPro attached to a dog, but so this one's a bit more forgivable than the first film in that regard, although it does feel like some of them there are more camera angles than there should be, especially in the Safe Haven one, because they have cameras and then like hidden body cameras, and it just feels like the camera angles shift too much, almost like an actual film, for me to really buy that this is real. But I will say I bought into that more than I did the first film. So overall, this is kind of a plus over the first one. But I really like this idea for the second story, Eduardo Sanchez's. It is out in the woods, so it is atmospheric. It's mostly quiet, which is good, because there's actually quite a bit of music in this one, which in found footage doesn't really make sense. Oh, also, the whole thing with the wraparound, I'm not really sure why as much of that was filmed as it should have been, in like a logical sense, but still, the wraparound was handled much better than in the first film, because it wraps around the film. It doesn't end before the first story, the last story. So you have this guy, he puts his GoPro on, he gets on his bike, he's going through the trails in the woods, and this wounded woman walks in front of him. He stops to help her. She starts vomiting blood. There's these people kind of wandering towards them from the woods. He goes to fend them off. They're zombies. He goes back to her. She turns into a zombie, attacks him. He runs off. We see him vomiting blood. The gore effects in this one are a lot better than the first film as well, especially in Safe Haven. I'll say Safe Haven, that's probably the biggest thing, is the gore effects. There's quite a bit of it. And the blood looks awesome, especially the spatter. Follow my channel, you know I have a thing for blood spatter. Blood spatter analysis is my dream job, but I just love the look of it as an aesthetic, blood spatter. It is pretty beautiful in Safe Haven. So he turns into a zombie, and he's got the GoPro on. So this is kind of the first time we've really seen a zombie movie through the eyes of a zombie. Maybe save for like Warm Bodies, but we really get the zombie's POV and his found footage. So that's really a first. That's pretty original. And I also just like how low-key it is and just how it unfolds. Because he dies. It's actually a lengthy scene where you just see his arm on the ground because he's dead. This couple, these hikers come up. They find him. He attacks them. They run off. They find someone else, I think. And there's just more and more people until eventually they come to this sort of not a gazebo, but a place with picnic tables and a roof, children's birthday party, and they just run amok on that. So it's just this thing that constantly builds up. Starts out with one guy on a bike, until eventually there's just like a dozen zombies because everyone they run into. I really like the build up of it. I do like the original idea of it being so sort of the POV of the zombie, or seeing what the zombie does, kind of seeing it through his eyes, and it does add some humanity to a zombie because like he's trying to break into this car with kids, sees his reflection, goes over to this dead redneck, grabs his shotgun, blows his head off, which then does this cool thing where the GoPro flies up in the air and it comes back down, lands right on him. Safe Haven, I believe it's in Indonesia. I'd say this one was probably the most, or the least interesting. Yeah, Indonesia. This documentary crew is looking into this cult called Paradise Gates. People are probably going to say Jim Jones, maybe because that's the only cult they know. They say they study true crime, but Jim Jones is really the only cult they know, and because there's like a Kool-Aid scene in it. I would say this one is probably closer to, say, the Heaven's Gate cult with Applewhite or something like that, because it is like in this compound, even like with like classrooms for kids. They're allowed into this compound to shoot. They want to make a documentary to show the world sort of an unbiased view, even though there have been some disappearances linked to them. And the crew kind of breaks up, and we see that all the kids are given Kool-Aid. Women, they have like these it seems like forced abortion, I guess. Like there's this woman that's up on the gynecology position, just torn up. The leader just attacks this one guy covered in blood. You find out it's a satanic cult. And when sorry, my nose is running so much. It's fall. Everything's really dying now, so it's starting to get to me. But after the time of enlightenment, when everyone takes the Kool-Aid or commits mass suicide, people are coming back as zombies or these white-faced, white-eyed, sort of, they're almost like a banshee ghost. Like they just shriek, like stand in place and shriek. Looks kind of cool. One guy, his girlfriend is part of the crew. She's pregnant. And it even comes to this part where there's all these women holding her down to the table, and they're just like white and screaming. And you do get like this CGI kind of like this baby trying to come through her. And then a spike. Kind of like shot from like over her shoulder on the table, but essentially Baphomet comes out, so we find it's a satanic cult. And Baphomet looks better when it's from a distance and kind of obscured by shaky cam. Because there is a scene where Baphomet peers over something to look down at the character. And it almost looks more like a llama than it does a goat. It looks kind of silly. But this story and the last one especially are the worst with the shaky cam. There's also, this one is more jump scare heavy than the first one. Like the jump scares in this are almost like 2017's It. Like just super, super, super loud noises. The only one that doesn't do that would be Sanchez's short, A Ride in the Park. I think that was really the only one that didn't have loud jump scares. Even the first one with the eye camera, I mean, when these ghosts appear, there's kind of like a loud noise. But this one, there's a lot of loud gunshots and screams and loud noises. And it is cool how he runs through all these rooms and either zombies or like these pale faced ghosts or whatever chasing after him. So it's pretty crazy. I get he's running around, so the camera's going to be nuts, but it did get a bit nauseating after a while. And yeah, Baphomet gets him at the end. Then the final story, uh, Slumber Party Alien Abduction. There's a bunch of kids. These parents go away. I think there's 3 kids. Teenage daughter, younger teenage son, then a younger son. They all have friends over, and at first it's the younger friends pulling pranks on the older friends. There is this really cool scene where, you know, they sneak up on him at the dock to shoot him with water balloons. But when one kid goes under, because it's just like this dark, murky lake, you just kind of see the alien in the distance. And it is kind of a traditional alien. Tall, white, bald, long arms with 3 long-ass fingers. Big black eyes, kind of a black mouth, which looks CGI. And normally, like when I see a ghost like that in a movie, like I think it's really silly and stupid looking with the CGI. But I've said this before, where it's an alien supposed to be otherworldly, the CGI doesn't really bother me that much. This one, the jump scares, I had to keep turning the TV down because every time the aliens are near, the camera will glitch out and there's like this loud, like, and eventually the aliens are just chasing the kids all around. They end up outside. And it does look cool. I mean, the aliens do look cool. And then, like, with the lighting, especially at one point where it's, like, cop cars in the distance, so you're, like, blue and red lights. Or they're down on the dock, and plus the aliens will, like, crawl and lumber towards them. I would say, aside from, like, the music, the loud jump scare music, and the really shaky cam, because, again, you have characters running around a lot, it's decent. I mean, it kind of treats the aliens more like a zombie movie than anything else because you do have a group of them just kind of chasing after people and dragging them. And yes, they do have like a little tiny dog, almost like a Toto dog, that they attach a GoPro to. First is a prank to spy on the younger kids, pull a prank on them, but then the aliens attack, so for the rest of the short, it's that footage. Yes, it does end with the aliens like picking these kids up in the sky. One was holding the dog, it falls, and it literally ends with the camera falling off, facing the dog, kind of bloody, kind of shaking, then it gives out. Though I will say the aliens looked cool. They, again, like the ghosts in the first story, or even like Baphomet in the Safe Haven story, looked better when they were from a distance or out of focus. They looked creepier. And so then the wraparound, the girlfriend gets more entranced in between each segment, until eventually she has like a bloody nose and a migraine, and then we see her just passed out. So then the boyfriend has to watch the last story. And then he sees footage of Kyle, because he makes like these vlogs about his tapes, saying like, if anyone knows my mother, she supports me in this, so now it's time to make my own tape. Shoots himself, really cool gore effects. I mean, it's like what you'd see on the internet. This is all blasted up, his tongue is hanging. He runs away in the footage, but just as he runs away, the PIs walk in, so they just missed him. Also, I should mention, in Safe Haven, there is this great gore, just blood spatter scene where the leader walks towards this character out of this smoky room in his underwear, but covered in blood, and he just is like, and then just explodes, and just the blood looks awesome, the spatter looks great. Definitely probably the best effect in the whole film, other than when Kyle does that. And so then the girlfriend kind of turns into a zombie, attacks the boyfriend PI, runs and hides in a closet. As she opens the door, he shoots her, but then he peeks through the clothes in the closet. Kyle's there, attacks him, kills him. And then Kyle just takes his camera while he's all mangled, tongue hanging. He's just like, as he holds the camera on himself. So overall, this is definitely a better handled film than the first one. It does have some issues, like the shaky cam is still, it's more believable, I guess, in these stories because you have characters running for their lives. But again, more futuristic, high-tech stuff that I don't understand why it would be on a VHS tape. Like the Skype call in the previous film, this one with the eyeball. But I will say the stories are better in this one. The characters in all of them were not as insufferable as the previous film. The wraparound was handled much better. And there was more to each story individually that I liked than in the previous film. I mean, the first one had cooler creatures or monsters or whatever. This one kind of just had zombies and aliens, but I really, really enjoyed the Ride the Park one. I mean, low-key, nothing but build-up, and, you know, seeing a found footage film from the POV of a zombie I thought was really cool. But it still had some good ideas. So yeah, not much else to say about it. I did like it more than the first film. I can't really say I'm still a fan of VHS. Like I would put this nowhere near the realm of the films from Amicus or Creepshow, even Creepshow 2, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Tales from the Dark Side, Trick or Treat, stuff like that. I have seen some comments and some reviews that they like the VHS format. They must think that this whole short story thing was started by VHS, not realizing that it's a whole genre called anthologies. Technically started in the 40s with Dead of Night, but made popular like 40 years before VHS. Like the whole short story thing, even then VHS did not break new ground at all. Apparently one guy, Rex Reed, did get in trouble or piss some people off because his review said he left after the first story. He thought it was so bad he left. And he described things later on in the film and described them wrong. So his criticisms were wrong. And I had to laugh because I've dealt with a few people, I'm sure they'll know who they are, who comment about how bad a movie is, but only watch like the first 10 minutes. So, and try to give this full-on critique, comparing it to movies that aren't even comparable, when they only saw the first 10 minutes. I'm like, well, kind of can't take it seriously. But, yeah, overall, much better than the first one, but not enough to where I say it's an anthology that I really enjoyed. So that's VHS 2. Next, I will do VHS Viral because it's on Hulu. Hulu does not have VHS 94 or 99. Eventually, if I find a way to see them, then I will. But I'll do VHS Viral, and then maybe I'll do like ABCs of Death 1 and 2 or something. And I do want to do some more Stephen King films before October ends. So stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.